I'm Eric Parker this morning on CT21 Sports Gaming. The hope was that legal betting in Connecticut would coincide with the start of the NFL season. That didn't happen, so what does have to happen before it can begin, and what's the timeline? We're getting answers from the governor's chief of staff, Paul Mounds. And are there any signs the Delta variant surge is starting to fade in our state? And how might the pandemic play out over the fall and winter? We're talking with an infectious diseases doctor about that. Plus, fall foliage in our Sunday spotlight, what our rainy summer means for the colors we'll see from the trees this autumn. It's all ahead this Sunday, September the 19th. CT21 starts right now.
From Channel 3, this is Connecticut's most watched current affairs program, CT21, with Eric Parker. Sponsored by Hartford Healthcare.
Good morning, I'm Eric Parker. Thanks for being with us. The NFL season is officially underway. The season opened up on the 9th. The hope on the part of the state had been that legalized sports betting would start at the same time here in Connecticut, but there are still some details that have to be worked out. So when will Connecticut sports fans be able to legally place their bets online? Paul Mounds is the governor's chief of staff, and he's been the point man on the team that worked to bring sports betting to our state. So, Paul, we've had the governor say any day now. Do we know what day it'll be?
Yeah, well, first of all, thanks for having me on the show as always, Eric. Yes, we do. We have been in close conversations with all of the partners, the two tribal nations and the Connecticut Lottery. We are now focused on October 7th, Thursday. That will be the full launch of online betting here in the state of Connecticut.
And there's a lot of different pieces to this, Paul. There's retail, there's online, there's the casinos. So for people who are interested in this, whether they're planning to bet or not, how will this all break down? Where will you actually be able to place a bet when you get to that day?
Yeah, well, as you know, there's still a lot of work that has to be done on various infrastructures, whether it's on the tribal lands or off tribal lands with the Connecticut Lottery, who has their partnership with Sports Tech. Each of those partners will be making sure that they're putting out firm information out there to the consumer about how you can participate this in a very safe manner. Like I said, we're very excited here in the state of Connecticut based upon the pace. I want to give kudos to Commissioner Michelle Siegel and all of her team at Department of Consumer Protection. We are moving at a pace that has not been seen by any other state who have launched sports gaming. To have from actual passage of legislation in late spring to being able to have the first bet being able to take right now, and as we're looking in early October, that just shows the greatness in terms of how well the state of Connecticut and its partners have worked together on this.
Well, that same point, though, is the reason some people have criticized the process, that things went so quickly that maybe some details could have been missed. The regulations, just because of the comment period, not because it's an emergency, but they had to be emergency regulations to get them through fast enough, so they're in place. So what do you say to people who say, okay, fine, it passed, it's going to be a thing, it's coming, but it just moved too quickly? Is there any credence to that criticism?
I would say on our end, there'll be no. We have utilized the best practices in the industry, the states who have done it well. We've also learned from the states who have not done it well. We've been utilizing all the best experts on this factor. And the way that the regulations process going, yes, it's an emergency regulations process, but they're still going to have the ability for the legislature to opine on the legislation or make any tweaks if they want to do in the future, whether it's next year or going further. And also the final regulations, which is through the emergency regulations process, also is going to go through as well. So we're going to have every opportunity to make any changes if there's necessary, but we want to make sure that people of Connecticut know that it's not just that it went through in a fast manner, it went through in a very conscientious manner to make sure that it's done right.
As the guy who's been dealing with all these regulations and all the logistics of making it happen, when those first bets are placed, is there something you'll be nervously watching? Is there one part of the process that you're just like, oh, I just need that to run smooth?
I would say one part of the process is obviously the geo-tracking. We want to make sure that for you to make a legal bet, that you are within the state of Connecticut. So that's the importance of having a soft launch period to make sure everything works correctly, and that we'll have in the regulations, it has for a soft launch period that will occur before a full launch. So making sure that is really done correctly. And then I'd say the other thing is the self-exclusionary portion. where if an individual can be able to put forward and say to the providers that I don't want to participate in it, or they from a problem gaming standpoint. So making sure that from a geo-tracking standpoint and the problem gaming standpoint, those are the two elements I know that's very much of a focus of our administration.
We said at the top of this segment, Paul, that the football season was the big goal, and it looks like you'll get most of that football season for people who are interested in placing bets. I was doing some research in anticipation of talking to you and looking at some of the numbers, and there's huge disparities of numbers on what this could bring in. You know, some of the people who were very pro sports gaming throwing out humongous numbers. I saw the governor at one point said maybe $50 million in revenue. As we're fine-tuning this, do you have a feel for what the state should be expecting?
I think the number that the governor put forth is still the target number that we're looking at. I think one of the keys on it was how is it going to launch? When was it going to launch? And what part of the year? I think by us being in the early part of the year, it allows us to stay right on target. And obviously, football, like I said, is only one of many sports that an individual can partake in. But I think right now we're on target to meet our overall goals that we presented to the legislature upon its passage.
I know you talked about the lottery and the sports tech retail sites, but obviously Mohegan Sun and Foxwoods have been in just generally the gambling business for a long time. Have they given you, as your partner, a feel for what the demand is at their casinos? I mean, do they have customers tapping their foot waiting for those sports books to open?
I will say the easy answer is yes. As you know, both of them have ventures not only in the state of Connecticut, but outside the state of Connecticut. They have a very strong understanding of the gaming industry, and that is extremely helpful to us as a state in putting together our process. But yes, there is strong interest in New England, and it's also a strong interest for those who are looking to travel to the state on the tourism front. But I think that's with all that said, I think one of the major keys that all of us are wanting to make sure is that it has to be done safely and legally, and also making sure we have the right protections that are put in from a problem gaming standpoint. And that was a big focus that the governor put in and our partners had in the legislation. And now it's time for us to make sure it's strongly put into fruition. So you're going to see more advertising and more billboards and more of that factor to make sure people understand if you have a problem on the problem gaming front, there are resources that you can reach out to that are both from the state and nonprofit and for-profit related elements.
All right, Paul Mounds, the Chief of Staff for Governor Ned Lamont. You've been quarterbacking this process. I'll use the pun. I didn't use delay a game earlier, so I'll use quarterbacking the process now.
I appreciate it.
All right.
And this time we're not on the 1 yard line anymore.
There you go. All right, we got all our football puns out of the way. We'll talk to you, I'm sure, in the future as we see how this all is going. Paul, thank you for being with us on this Sunday morning.
As always, Eric, thank you so much.